It's really wonderful to be here. To be here with all of you. To be especially here with Quentin Young and his remarkable career of activism fighting for all of us. And to be back in Washington State and Seattle. I was here in November of 2009. It was right around Thanksgiving. And my last book had just come out. It's the book of columns that used to appear in the Seattle Times. And I hope, I mean, they've always been great supporters, and I really do hope that they'll have us back in the newspaper. And I write the columns with Dennis Moynihan, and since the book had just come out, we were here, I was speaking, we did a big event, believe it or not, at CPAC, it was Thanksgiving time at the airport. As people were running back and forth, it was a great chance to meet people and talk to people about ideas and where they were going. I met one nurse from Bellingham who was a nurse in the Vietnam War, and for the first time in decades, she was returning to see what happened in Vietnam. I met a farmer who was fighting in genetically modified crops, and it was really a remarkable time. It was also the time that Sarah Palin's book had come out, remember? Going Rogue. And so my book was on one side of the bookstore, her book was on the other, and a book website was calling up to see who was winning in terms of selling books. And people were coming through, and I was signing books, and finally they called and I said, you know, we've sold, I don't know how many books at that moment. We've been there for about an hour, and I said, I think it's 25-0 right now. I said, Going Rogue is going nowhere. Whereupon we then headed up to Canada. Since people were celebrating Thanksgiving in this country, we thought we would go to Canada, where they weren't eating turkey to talk turkey. And I was going to give a speech at the Vancouver Public Library to support the community radio stations there. It was a big fundraiser. And speaking of community radio, I hope all of you support KDCS. It is an important station, and they're really hitting a milestone right now because they are able to reach 1 million more listeners if they elevate their transmitter and put it on top of a mountain. It's now next to the station in a parking lot, and they need $160,000 to do this. They raised over $100,000, and so soon, even in Seattle, you'll be able to hear them, and they'll have a stronger signal. And I hope you all support KDCS. They're going into fundraising next week because community radio, Pacifica Radio, independent media, public radio, and public television are where it's at. I think the media powerful institutions on earth, can be the greatest force for peace on earth when they're not being used to beat the drums for war. And independent media, not brought to you by the weapons manufacturers, by the oil, gas, and coal companies, not brought to you by big pharma and the insurance industry, has the greatest possibility to provide a forum for authentic discussion and debate that will lead to the most just society we can achieve in this country. So we were headed to Canada, and I just met some folks from Spain who live in Vancouver who came down for this event tonight. Well, we were headed up there, and we came to the border. We were just driving up. It was raining hard, and they took our passports, and they flagged us over and said we had to go into the, customs into the big border facility there. We walked in and they called me up to the counter and they said, we want your notes on what you're going to be talking about today. And I said, you're kidding. I said, we already gave you our passports. They said, I want your notes. The customs officer said, fully armed, I want your notes. So this is the thing. I don't really speak from notes. And I said, just for a minute, please. So I ran out to the car and I got the book. And I brought it in and I gave them a copy. And one of them was typing in a computer, another of the customs agents started to read the book, which I thought was a good thing. They said, what are you talking about today? And I said, well, this is the thing. I sort of riff from columns in the book. And you really could come to the talk tonight because I wasn't planning to give it on the border, but he said, I need to know what you're talking about. So I said, well, I thought I would start with the last column in the book. It says, imagine the scene. America 2009. 45,000 people have died in a year, an average of almost more than 120 a day. Who's taking them out? What's killing them? To investigate, President Obama might be tempted to call on Jack Bauer, the fictional rogue intelligence agent from the hit TV series 24, who invariably employs torture and a host of other illegal tactics to help the president fight terrorism. But terrorism is not the culprit here. It's lack of adequate health care. So maybe the president's solution isn't Jack Bauer, but rather the actor who plays him. The star of 24 is played by Kiefer Sutherland, whose family has very deep connections to health care reform in Canada. Sutherland is the grandson of the late Tommy Douglas. I just told Congressman McDermott this. He wasn't aware, and he just told you the story of Tommy Douglas, the pioneering Canadian politician credited with creating the modern Canadian healthcare system. As a youth, Tommy Douglas almost lost his ailing leg. His family could not afford treatment, but a doctor treated him for free, provided his medical students could observe. As an adult, Douglas saw the impact of widespread poverty caused by the Great Depression. Trained as a minister, he had a popular oratorical style. He moved into politics, joining the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation Party. After several years in Parliament, he led the party's decisive victory in the province of Saskatchewan, ushering in the first social democratic government in North America. Douglas became Premier of Saskatchewan and pioneered a number of progressive policies, but his biggest battle, for which he is best remembered, is the creation of universal health insurance called Medicare. It passed in Saskatchewan in 1962, guaranteeing hospital care for all residents. Doctors there staged a 23-day strike supported by the U.S.-based American Medical Association. Despite industry opposition, the Saskatchewan Medicare program was so successful and popular it was adopted throughout Canada. While Tommy Douglas was fighting for health insurance in Canada, a similar battle was raging in the U.S., resulting in the passage of Medicare and Medicaid, giving guaranteed single-payer health care to senior citizens and the poor. I didn't plan to read the book to the border agents, but they were waiting for more. So, someone who's again gotten attention, especially in these last few days, Rush Limbaugh. Fox News Channel's Glenn Beck and insurance industry funded groups have encouraged people to disrupt town hall meetings. This was leading up to with members of Congress. A number of confrontations you might remember around the country. This was in 2011. Rush Limbaugh said 24 was one of his favorite shows. He even visited the set. Well, he should learn from the real-life actor who plays his hero Jack. Limbaugh and his cohorts might find truth not as satisfying as fiction. Rush In 2004, a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation poll named Tommy Douglas the greatest Canadian. At a protest in 2000 against efforts to roll back the Medicare system in the province of Alberta, Kiefer Sutherland defended Canada's public single-payer system. He said private health care does not work. America's trying to change their system. It's too expensive to get comprehensive medical care in the U.S. Why on earth are we going to follow their system here? Kiefer Sutherland went on to say, I consider it a humanitarian issue. This is an issue about what is right and wrong, what is decent and what is not. Maybe Jack Bauer can save the day.